Hi, today I want to speak to you about, well, probably not surprised, marriage, but marriage and investing. Investing your money, handling, your everyday finances, and how the two are like eerily related. But it isn't so surprising that they're related in a sense because everything in life takes time. Yeah. Yeah. And like even this morning, before I jumped on to do this with you, I was sort of trying to create a bit of I guess yeah, managing my finances, creating a bit of a workflow, like a sort of okay, I'm going to, use this type of credit card for this type of transaction, sort of separating my business from my personal. But then I'm thinking, well, maybe I should even dissect it more and make it like family, personal, and business. And, do I need three credit cards or can I keep it simple and just use two different credit cards? And, how am I going to collect and reconcile my bank, in QuickBooks, like collect receipts? And it takes a lot of thought. Like if you want the system to work well, you just don't haphazardly, hope for the best or, live on a prayer. It should go okay. Like, I don't really have any system, but I'm hoping I can manage my finances well. That's the way I used to live. And that's also the way I lived through my earlier years of marriage, I guess you could say. And it's also the way I invested in my money. Like, again, there's just so many similarities here. I was not one to be very invested in investing money, put it that way. Um, it's not like I didn't have investments. I did, but they were sort of created, like my dad sort of started me out by just, whatever I was making like as a wage, and back then it was on the farm that he would pay me, he would invest that in a GIC. And that's when bank rates were high and it seemed to make sense to do it like that. But then as life went on and he actually passed away when I was about 27, just around the time that I was getting married. I didn't have any foundation, in terms of how to invest. And it's like, so when the credit union would call me and just say, "Hey, this GIC is, has passed its term or whatever," they would say, "What do you want to do?" And I'd be like, "I don't know, I guess reinvest it." I don't think I asked what the bank rate was once. And only later on, I mean later on, like 20 years later on, did I realize, oh my God, it's great that the money was compounding. The interest rates obviously changed a lot. When I came to that realization, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. So I feel people in relationships, especially when you're young, do the same thing. It's sort of like, well, maybe I'll just stick my head in the sand and just live on a prayer and hope and wish that everything's going to go well without it having any sort of structure, system, workflow in the background. And this is what I want to talk to you about today is sort of we can't just hope. We have to do daily actions, like daily deposits in the bank account, and then funneling those deposits into certain categories, like to make sure everything is sort of balanced and maintained in our relationship. Like even, yeah, I think I mentioned to you, like before this, it's a work day for me, but I took time out this morning to sort of do a bunch of like yeah, managing and like taking a look at my bank statements, taking a look at my credit card statements, and you're thinking, well, yes, okay, so I have flexibility in my work, right? Like, I have the option to take time out and do that. Maybe for somebody who works a 9 to 5, you might be doing that on a Tuesday evening at 7 or whatever. But my day goes much longer than 9 to 5, just so you know. It's sort of, I have the freedom of choosing when to do this. If I want to do it at 9 a.m. or if I want to do it at 7 p.m., I have the choice. Anyway, that's not related to what I'm talking about today. But yeah, what I realize is that both investing, managing your money, and having a good relationship, a good marriage, both require a heck of a lot of patience. Like when you think of compounding, right? And humility, both need a lot of humility. And then, especially in terms of investing and marriage, not panicking when things get messy. So, personally, maybe any of you who know me or have listened to me speak, I might have mentioned, my own personal story where when I panicked, at a certain stage in my relationship, and I just thought there's no other way except bail. Like I must leave. Well, we separated, but we reunited and I had asked him to leave. So, and I remember that, it was sort of like non-negotiable. Like my heels were stuck deep in the ground and there was no option. We separated very amicably. Like it wasn't sort of like a high conflict separation, nor would it ever be. But yeah, it was just like I couldn't see past, it at all. And I know a lot of women who would feel the same way and men as well, but women, you know what? Like when we get that emotion behind us, like look out. I always say when a woman says those words, I'm done, it's done. And again, how does this relate to our investments, right? It's every good investor says take away the emotion because if you're going to start selling and buying, you know, because of emotion stirred up in you, I mean, it's the definition of panic, and we we don't want to feel panicked at all. And so even when I counsel couples and they're considering this, I mean, I often suggest maybe 3 months of separation. And I think legally you have to be separated for a year before you can actually have the divorce legalized. It's for a reason, but anyway, even if it's just really bad and they're not really even thinking separation, like just sort of give it 3 months of, removing the emotion and see how you feel because we don't do things rationally when it's emotionally fueled. I mean, back to simplifying, I think, your finances, and that's what I mean. I want a workflow when it comes to managing my finances. I want a workflow in a system like a Venn diagram when it comes to parenting and so many things because simplicity in itself is divine. When you think of it, it brings us so much peace when things are simple. Like I don't think God made us multitask. That's not what he wants us to do, is to multitask our way into burnout. Basically, that's what you're doing. Instead, he made us to show up to our partners um, faithfully, quietly, consistently. And that means intentionally attentional. I just came up with that term last week when I interviewed a guest on my podcast, Erica, who it was all about parenting. And, it just sort of rang out. It's like we can be excellent parents if we're intentional about where we place our attention. And it's the same with managing your money, right? Like it's sort of like if you're just again living on a prayer, or if you have, really great business ideas. Everybody gets great business ideas, but it's sort of like, can we make this work type of business idea? Like we need some structure in the background. I'm actually working with a client, and maybe one of you are listening right now, with a couple right now where he's a great idea generator, and we all have those, right? Those shower thoughts. It's like, oh, this would be a great idea. But he comes up with the idea, and she's expected, because they have a business together. She's expected to, do all the logistics of that. And there's a lot of logistics that go behind a great business. So that all that structure needs to be there in order for it to be a great business. As they say, behind every great man is a great woman. And, in this case, maybe he's more emotional than she is. But whatever it is, you got to separate them in order for things to go well. So, yeah, I mean, I'm all about small things often. If you manage your money, your day-to-day transactions well, it won't take time. It won't take a lot of your time. But if you wait to take care of it months down the road and you realize, there's been fraudulent transactions on your credit card for the last 5 months, and, because you look at your financial statements once a month, then you're going to start scrambling, right? And it's the same in your marriage. If you don't do the small things often, I mean, as the Gottmans say, small things often, they came up with that term, but I upped that term a little bit, and I whatever you want to call it, but I find it's doing ordinary things, everyday ordinary things with extraordinary love when it comes to your marriage. So if that means living a day with intention of love, it's so many things you could be doing, right? Whether that's, yeah, balancing the family books, or whether that's folding laundry or making a meal. No one really likes these tasks, but if you think and you pause and you just think, why am I doing this? I'm not doing this as a means to an end that, this shirt can be folded and put in my drawer. I'm doing it like for my child or whatever, or it's like it's out of love, right? For your spouse. It's sort of, and it's not like that's the whole, we got to get away from the tit for tat. It's sort of, well, I did all of this and you did, 20% of the household chores today. When if you're speaking to your partner, no, it's sort of like I enjoyed doing that 80% because I did it out of love for the family. And I get it that that needs to be harmonized and it should balance, just like your investment portfolio. Like, I mean, with what's happening in the world now with, Trump and the tariffs and the stock market taking a dive, it's sort of, that's not when you panic and you start selling everything. A great idea is if you don't feel confident in balancing your portfolio, then you get a robo advisor and you get them to automatically balance your portfolio, or you go into managed investments and you get the brokerage to manage your portfolio, right? So it's sort of, but it has to be done every single, well, I mean, you have to have some sort of investment in investing in your relationship sort of thing. Um, yeah. So you have to see the value as well of staying through your boredom, in the relationship. Like there's times in your relationship, especially when you have young kids, where it's like the same old, the same old, same old all the time, right? It's sort of like rinse and repeat part of your relationship where you're both pretty much exhausted. The kids are driving you crazy. Sort of like you you make lunches, you make them breakfast, you pack them up, you drive them to school, daycare, you go to work, you come home, you unpack the lunch boxes, you make supper, you drive them to their whatever if they need to be, you do the homework, and like you're exhausted, so you go to sleep. And that's like 5 days out of the week for sure. Saturday, you're running off with your, like a chicken with your head cut off, and, catching up on all the other things that needed to be done during the week. And it's just like, that's that's not really the glory years, but you're doing it with love because you know that it's going to pay, like the dividends are going to pay off, right? Like the retirement plan, the money's going to compound, like it's worth it. It's worth it. And you build love as a couple throughout those times. I mean, that's where the sustenance of the relationship comes from. It's that we've made it through these times. That's not when you bail. It's like you went through the hardest times. So when you're going through some sort of midlife challenge or crisis, realize that's normal, don't second guess what you're doing at that point. It's to me that's sort of evil in a way. Like when you get those thoughts coming in, just challenge those thoughts and it's like, no, I'm not going to, convince can like I don't know, I'm not going to focus on these thoughts of this person actually isn't the person for me because of X, Y, Z. No, focus on the thoughts of, how, like, what do I need to do to see more value in my marriage? I need to get some help for this, then get help for it. But it's in the back and forth of those everyday challenges that builds your love. So yeah, if we think about like the sort of dollar cost averaging in love, you have to think that love is a decision. It's not a feeling. So it's, as I said before, it's the daily acts that you do every single day. That's the dollar cost averaging that comes into play here when it comes to your marriage. Just making coffee for the family in the morning, or bringing coffee to somebody, or yeah, cleaning off the windshield from the snow that came the night before for your partner. It's greeting them in the morning, you know. Sometimes we have to talk about the basics here sometimes, depending where the couple is, like greeting them, asking them how their day is. I always say, ask how the day was, not what did you do today, sort of thing, whether that's your child, any person. Like everyone loves to talk about themselves and talk about their days. So take time to ask that. It's making those small steady deposits. Now, I need to go run to see a client. The last thing I want to say to you is think about having, sort of an emergency fund principle. Have the emotional reserves. When your partner is depleted, do you have extra to give there? That's sort of what I was talking to you about. Like one day you might be, one week, one month, you might be doing 80% of the load. You know, yes, make sure you give yourself that self-preserve, that make sure you what's the word I'm looking for? It's sort of like, gain that like draw from, whether that's in prayer or hang out with a girlfriend or like draw in whatever energy you need for yourself. Make sure you take in air. You can't just breathe out all the time, right? You need to take in that air, that self-preserving part, so that you do have that reserve to use in times of emergency where your partner has to travel for a month, out of the year, or there's a death in the family, right? Like, I mean, you need to draw in that emotional reserve. And again, I feel like this is daily. For me, it's daily prayer. It's daily conversations with God. It's, doing acts of love gives me, like, it comes right back to me, right? So that's the type of reserve that I'm talking about. Okay. There's so much more I could say about this, like honestly, but I do have a blog post as well that you can go to. That's I try to incorporate my videos here with blog posts and newsletters, and then sometimes even on Instagram I'll have something related. But in the end, I just like don't micromanage your investments, like, and don't micromanage your spouse. That's something else I really want to say. Like, let go of that need to control, and you just got to trust the process. And that's what I mean about trust. Like, I mean, God works in rhythms, not rushes. So you got to see that if you always want to give some sort of peace in someone's life, some reassurance. It's that contentment in the marriage that you're looking for, to know that someone has your back, for example. That just, again, that's where the love just compounds over and over. Um, not selling all your stocks when the market crashes. It's you protect yourself from doing that when there's that contentment in your marriage, and just know that that type of peace comes from the slow growth. It comes from not touching your investments and panicking. Okay, so bottom line, small things matter. Do small things, ordinary things with extraordinary love. Be intentional in terms of how you manage, these small moments. Respond slowly. Do not react. If you're reacting, that's an inner wound inside yourself. It's not because the other person is doing something wrong. Check in with yourself and make sure you make those daily deposits. And yeah, believe me, it's worth it. Like I say, because you're building a system that's going to take you through those really challenging times when the market crashes. So, hope that makes sense. Let me know um, if you feel the same way, if you got something out of this, and yeah, mention it in the comments. Hope to see you again soon. Bye.